back. When it comes to young voters, you might think Hillary Clinton and Elizabeth Warren would top their list of preferred presidential candidates, and you'd be right. But there is another name that might surprise you.
I really will be very interested in the people themselves. What do they want? Do they want a continuation of traditional politics? And if they do, I'm happy with that.
That's right, social conservative Dr. Ben Carson. And he is expected to announce that he will run for the presidency quite soon. Joining us now to take a look at young voters and their presidential preferences, Dorian Davis, adjunct professor of journalism at Seton Hall University, who joins us from Newsmax, New York. Professor, welcome to Newsmax Prime.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Dorian, here's an interesting situation. Ben Carson, a traditional values guy, and there he is, the preference of the millennial voters. What accounts for that?
Well, I think that it might be a little bit of wishful thinking. You know, we've had almost two terms of the Obama administration now, and there's this natural voter fatigue that tends to set in with any administration by the second term. And you see that in polls. You know, Harvard University just released a poll recently that showed that the Democratic lock on the youth vote is a little less secure than it used to be. Obama had secured about 66% in 2008, and about 55% of Democrats in the 18 to 29 bracket are looking for a Democrat to replace Obama. So there has been some erosion, and I think Republicans are kind of taking heart in that and hoping that they can court that youth vote. But I am extremely skeptical, because you have to remember 55%, while it's down from support Democrats have received previously from young voters, it's still a landslide.
Dorian, I have to ask you this, because during my days in Congress, I'd always try to go out and get the youth vote, and people would say, now, wait a minute, that's great, but young people don't show up to vote by and large demographically. It's people 55 plus. Will this change with millennials?
I think that it's issues that excite young voters, and if the issues on the table in a particular election are not motivating to that demographic, then they won't show up. Young voters are excited by things generally like the environment, by things like, I guess the latest issue is college loan debt forgiveness. And occasionally you see them getting active about foreign affairs. 2004, for instance, the opposition to the Iraq War drove a lot of the youth vote that went for John Kerry. I am expecting young people to turn out in big numbers in 2016, particularly considering some of the candidates running, like Hillary, the first female candidate, if she gets the nomination.
Fair enough. Let's switch gears now to the Supreme Court. Earlier this week, the High Court heard oral arguments about same-sex marriage. Now, the decision will not be announced until June, but several people have already put forth some strong comments. Let's listen to what Peter Spriggs, Senior Fellow for the Family Research Council, had to say, and then we'll get your reaction.
We simply think that the government should not actively affirm, celebrate, and subsidize those relationships by redefining marriage, and should not be actively punishing the people who happen to disagree or disapprove of homosexual conduct.
Dorian, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that a lot of conservative leaders are behind the times on the marriage issue. The Republican establishment and a lot of the candidates who are prospectively running for president, maybe Santorum and Huckabee aside, are already starting to modify their position on the marriage issue. Scott Walker recently said that he has attended a gay wedding reception. And Rick Perry said that he would also attend a friend's gay wedding. So you see their positions kind of softening on the issue, and I think it's part of a general Republican rebranding on marriage in preparation for 2016. And I think conservative leaders who are arguing that we should, in some cases, use civil disobedience to show our disapproval of the Supreme Court hearings and their ultimate decision, I think they're misguided.
Well, let me just ask you about this, though. Do you believe government should compel ordained ministers to officiate at weddings with which they have strong theological disagreements?
Well, I'm a libertarian, so I tend to believe the less government, the better. But we have been on a path for the past 200 years to extend freedoms to minorities one after another. And I do think the gay rights movement is the freedom movement in America of the 21st century. I think that priests and preachers would be
Dorian,
compelled
we appreciate your time. It grows short, but we very much appreciate a libertarian perspective. It's just that at times government, and the fear is government might compel actions that run at odds with personal and true religious freedom. There's always a challenge when it comes to personal liberties and what some perceive as the collective good of society. At any rate, Dorian, we thank you for your time. Look forward to having you back sometime real soon. We'd like to hear from you as well. Send your comments via email to Newsmax Prime at newsmaxtv.com, also on Facebook and Twitter.